morning we'll keep it quite straight. And the good news is that yesterday we dealt with zero waste, looking at circularity by and large. Today we'll be looking at the climate action front. And so this morning, I'm happy to be here. And I have with me two speakers, one with us in flesh and the other with us in spirit. Come on. All right. So this morning, this is what we are going to do. And I would want to, even before setting the goal for today's agenda, I would want you to help me acknowledge and welcome the Global Director for Science and Policy at GAIA, Dr. Tangri, to the stage, please. So thank you for the resounding welcome. Dr. Neil, it looks like you're a very popular man. It's good to have you here on stage. All right, so this morning, the second speaker will be introduced shortly, and then we take the video, which will be with us in spirit. So let me just set the goal for today. This morning, the goal basically is it's looking at it in three parts. So we are looking at the importance of the waste sector to the climate agenda. And we are unpacking it in three goals. So number one, we will be looking at the framework for zero waste as the climate champion.
I'll speak from the podium.
Number two, provide an overall strategy for climate mitigation and adaptation in the waste sector. And then number three, to explain the core benefits of zero waste solutions. We can't overstate this. Every country, every government looks out for the core benefits, and that actually is what convinces them to want to buy into any front or any frontier. And so it's important to be able to clearly understand the core benefits zero waste brings to the larger economy, and by understanding this, be able to communicate it to the various governments, and then be able to solicit for their support and buy-in. And so quickly, I go straight to inviting our first speaker for the day. And we'll start by watching a recorded presentation of Dr. Aderiana Mbandi. She is the Regional Air Quality Expert at the Africa Office of UNEP. And she will provide us with an overview of the challenges and opportunities for climate action in Africa, particularly focusing on greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector. Dr. Mbandi could not make it to us, could not make it in person, but she's with us. So please, let's listen keenly. If you have questions, you kindly take note of the questions. We'll give you the opportunity. We'll package the questions and we'll send it back to her wherever she is. And she touched on both challenges and opportunities taken by Dr. Tangri, and who is from GAIA, and he will delve deep into the transformative potential of zero waste solutions as a climate game changer. Dr. Tangri will elaborate on the concept of climate and methane momentum, illustrating its interconnectedness with the waste sector. He will also discuss the significant greenhouse gas mitigation potential of zero waste practices, including methane and organics, as well as the adaptation benefits they offer. I think oftentimes the discussions with the waste sector has more or less been limited to the mitigation aspects. Today we get the opportunity to also hear what the adaptation front holds for us. And then from there, Dr. Tangri will present compelling case studies. And so if your city's case study is not here, after this session, you may want to see him. And then, try to lobby and get your city's case study. Please, on this note, let's welcome Dr. Tangri.
That is quite a large charge. I will do my best. Habari za asubuhi. And yes, I want to talk about the climate crisis, which we are already living. It's not something for the future. It's here now. And so that means that we need immediate, fast action to bring emissions down to zero. But we also need long-term systemic change. It's not one or the other. We need both of those. And fortunately, zero waste offers us solutions that address both of those, while, as Engineer Fiifi was saying, also allowing us to improve on our resilience to climate change, adaptation, and co-benefits. Co-benefits is this terrible word that climate policy people use to talk about everything else we care about in life, right? Our jobs, our societies, our culture, education, health, it's all co-benefits. But hopefully we'll touch on that. I'll try to touch on all of this briefly. But let's start with methane, or methane, for those of you who prefer the British pronunciation. You've been hearing about this so far. Waste as a sector is the third largest source of anthropogenic, meaning human-caused methane emissions to the atmosphere. It's responsible for about 20% of methane emissions, and it is the fastest growing sector. Methane is important because it is a gas that is 82 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. So it's far more powerful, ton for ton. It traps far more heat. But the good news about methane is it doesn't last very long. The average lifetime in the atmosphere is about 12 years. And that means that if we eliminate methane emissions today, immediately we're going to see the atmospheric concentration start to drop and less heat kept in the atmosphere. So when we talk about fast action, really fast turnaround, immediate impacts, methane is understandably the focus. But it's not the only connection between waste and climate change, because waste really is just one step in this large material cycle, right? That starts with the extraction of natural resources, processing them, turning them into products, consuming them, and then finally we discard them. That whole material economy, as we call it, all of the tactile things in our lives that we can put our hands on, that is 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So long-term systemic change means reducing waste and reducing methane, reducing greenhouse gas emissions throughout the entire material economy. And of course, we need strategies that allow us to do that while strengthening the economy, delivering social benefits, improving our adaptation and resilience to climate change. So I'm going to talk about specific zero waste interventions this is really important because we live in an era of more droughts and more floods, right? And when the soil can absorb and retain water, it ameliorates both of those. It reduces the impacts of both drought and flooding. And we can actually return degraded farmland to health and support increased food production. So now let's talk about recycling. This is also a critical component of zero waste systems. If compost is the secret superpower, recycling is the ongoing. Again, commingling of waste reduces the value and increases the difficulty and cost of recycling. Now, recycling is commonly done. It is already universal, and it's mostly done by the informal sector. The informal sector we've been talking a lot about so far. We're talking about 12 to 56 million people around the world. And they collect up to 45% of the waste stream in some cities. So it reduces emissions upstream in the extraction, the manufacturing. Remember that cycle I showed you at the beginning. But most of the labor is done under very poor conditions, without legal sanction or protections, without guaranteed incomes, and frankly, without a lot of the respect that waste pickers in the informal sector are due. This gathering is a welcome change. So again, as we talked about a lot, formal incorporation of waste pickers is the path to economic stability, but it also produces better results in terms of more recycling, less waste to landfills, and reduced emissions. And what we have seen is that you can get 35% or more in greenhouse gas reductions from recycling, which means adding that on top of compost, you can actually get the waste sector to be a net negative sector. Okay, I have to rush now. Source reduction. It's really important that we go upstream, and there are important opportunities in stopping things before they become a problem. Plastic is the best example of that. It's 5.3% of global greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also a huge problem in terms of flooding, right? It's plastic that blocks the drainages and increases flooding, creates mosquito habitat, and that increases malaria and chikungunya transmission. So this is a public health measure. Banning plastics early on, banning plastic bags, plastic film, a lot of plastic products is going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also gives us all of these other important benefits. We had a whole discussion on plastic yesterday, so I'll kind of skip over that. But it's also important when we talk about source reduction to talk about food loss and waste. 1/3 of all food in the world produced does not reach people. It's lost or wasted. And there's a huge potential there to address food loss and waste. And then last of all, we need to end waste burning, whether it's in cement kilns, in waste to energy incinerators, or open burning on the roadside. This is a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions, and as our sister from Nairobi was saying, also a major public health threat. So ending this can actually eliminate, in Seoul, it is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions from waste is actually incineration. And right here in Dar es Salaam, we found it's the second largest source from the open burning. So that's a critical step as well. So these are the conclusions. I would encourage you to look at our reports. We have a number of reports. Some of them are in the back here, and happy to take questions, and apologies for running over time.
Thank you, Dr. Neil Tangri, for your beautiful presentation. Of course, we are constrained with time, but I think you still managed to capture all the essential parts. And so thank you once again. And from where I sit, I saw 4 main things that you captured. I think you showcased the opportunities in converting organic waste into compost, irrespective of whatever technologies that may be looked at. The opportunities for also recycling of plastic and then other other important waste streams. I think he also captured the issue of waste burning and how that is also dangerous to our agenda. And then finally, but one of the important aspects has to do with food waste, and which touches on sustainable consumption and how we can also reduce glut, and then also at the retail points, how we can also eat what we can consume. So you take what you can consume, you don't take more than that. And so thank you once again. On this note, as we conclude our panel discussions, I would like to invite questions. So what we'll do is maybe we'll take 3 questions, if there are, and then we'll have Dr. Neil Tangri address them. If you had any question for our first presenter, Dr. Aderiana, maybe we'll see what the Lord will do, but let the questions come and then we'll see how we take it up front. Any questions, please? Okay, so I see 1 hand, but okay, I see 2 hands. Okay, so please, yes, let's take the first one and then you come here.
Nigeria. Yeah, so I definitely listened to the 2 presentations, and I think the messages are clear. But there is something that we need to start looking at if we must address the global plastic menace, which is the point of the source of raw materials for the production of those plastics. We need to start tackling that issue, because not just addressing the current challenges, but we need to think about the future. Because if we don't critically look at the transition by looking at the phase out of fossil fuel extraction, which is possibly where the majority of our plastics come from, and also the rubber plantation because of the reckless way these resources are extracted, you see the link that apart from the plastic problem that we are having right now, at the point of extraction, it also creates its own problems for people. So while we look at addressing the global plastic menace at this point, we need to also tackle the point of extraction of those raw materials that actually give us those plastics. That is where we can truly address the global plastic problem. If not, we will be pursuing the problem, tackling the problem in one direction, whereas it is creating a bigger problem at the other side. So that is just the contribution I want to make. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Godfred from the Boadi Association. Very clear presentation, thank you so much. But just one question on semantics of the phrase that we use very often, open burning. We don't like in the north. Open burning doesn't happen so much. But what I would like to ask you, binding open or like addressing open burning might imply an interpretation that closed burning is good. So why do we actually continue using this? Maybe we should actually change the narrative here somehow.
Thank you. Okay, so you go to the back. We take Sandra as the last one, and then we wrap up for the session.
Dr. Tangri, just a question. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of changing people's behavior, because I think it's key. In order to do this, all of this that we want, we really need to work on that. So maybe you can give us some insight on that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think the first one was a clarion call, more or less to look at, not to only consider the downstream, but also to consider the upstream, right from the extraction of the materials for the production of plastics. The second one is, why are we limiting the discussion of burning to open burning as if closed burning is any good? And then the third is on behavioral change and how that plays a key role in this. Dr. Tangri, please.
Thank you. So on the first point, I completely agree. There as much as we are here talking about zero waste, some very important interventions need to be upstream. It's not all about waste management. It's about banning certain products and even certain materials so that they never become products and then waste. And plastic is kind of the best example of that. Piotr, I agree with you that some are trying to use the problem of open burning to call for incineration. And this is why I said, look, we really need to end all waste burning. Whether it's enclosed, it's out in the open, it's called alternative fuels in a cement kiln, it's in a pyrolysis plant. You know, there's a continuous kind of name game and small variations on new technologies, but really waste burning is always going to release emissions, both greenhouse gas emissions as well as toxic emissions. So Sandra, your point on behavioral change I think is very important. And I think what we heard yesterday from a number of the speakers is that when you set up good systems, people will behave in accordance with those systems, right? So we have to be sure, behavioral change is very important, but we need to put in place systems so that behavioral change makes sense. And when we put all the onus on individual behavior, then we find we're rowing upstream. It's very difficult work. The one place I would really call out behavioral change is around overconsumption. We have so much production of things that are very little utility for a very short amount of time. Plastic products, plastic packaging, all kinds of things. And particularly in the global north, if you go to a waste facility and you're astonished at the things that people are throwing out. This is going to be a long process of training people to value people and communities and relationships and experiences more than products and manufactured items in their lives. But I think it's very important that we begin that work.
The energy has gone down a bit. I think my ladies will need a snack break. So Doc, thank you so much for the responses. But I assure you that the questions, the comments we have should not end here. We should actually take it up even during snack breaks and then other breaks that we have. And let's continue to engage. And then I would like to say that thank you so much to the two presenters, Dr. Aderiana and Dr. Neil Tangri. Please, can we do it for them? And then, more importantly, you also need your own round of applause because you've been very energetic, and then I really enjoyed this session. So please, let's applaud ourselves for being wonderful participants.